sharing this very important topic. And uh, I think for Karnataka, I would be giving a small presentation. Most of it, I hope Bivash and others have also joined my batchmates. If not, we can see Bivash here only. You have the power button. Next again. So, see, this map I am showing not because of any specific purpose. As we can see that most forests, dense forests are there in Karnataka on the western side, that these are western Ghats. And as we rise from the coastal area, we see variability of teak in different proportions. And as we get up Ghat, and we see the plateau part of it, we get higher density of teak. So just this green map itself, the darker green, which is evergreen forest, and above that, the greens which we see are the areas which are mostly teak predominant areas. Next. I won't go into details of origin and distribution. Most of the speakers have spoken about it. I would only go on the last point where we are talking about teak plantations. So first teak plantation was done in 1865 at Lakkolli in Chikmagalur district. Next. And distribution of teak in Karnataka, if you see, it is almost there in whole of Karnataka in different various proportions. And there are only few districts, maybe 5 or 6 districts, where we don't find teak, but the density of teak and its gregariousness is varying in all these districts. Next. Uh, as Deepak Sharma Sahab has told in yesterday's his lecture that we have three kinds of teak areas, three in moist teak bearing areas, which is very moist, moist teak forest and slightly moist. All these things are dependent on uh, rainfall. And then we have southern moist mixed deciduous forest, which most of it we can see in Dandeli teak and Hunsur teak are part of moist teak bearing areas. And if you see why this map is important is if you see that darker line, faded green line turning into yellow, that is where we have this dry teak bearing forest, which are very dry teak and dry teak forests. They are also intermixed with southern dry mixed deciduous forest. These areas are called teak pole areas, and the earlier areas are called high forest blocks. Next. And I think all of us know about various associates. In high forest blocks, you have Xylea and Terminalia paniculata, Tomentosa, Lagestromia lanceolata, Dalbergia latifolia being another very major species. And in case of bamboo, it is Bambusa bambus. Whereas in case of drier teak areas, higher percentage of Anagosis latifolia and Delinia pentagana and Boswellia, Maduka, Buchnania, Lanzan, all these species are found in more number. And in case of bamboo, we see more of Dendrocalamus strictus bamboo. Next. Demand of teak, as we know, is increasing day by day. Despite getting all the substitutes, the best quality teak even now also fetches very high price. If you see the variability of price in last 25 years or so, it was somewhere between say 20,000 to 25,000 rupees per cubic meter, but today it is going beyond 1,20,000 per cubic meter. It is a very good material for building construction, furniture, cabinet, all these things are known. And uh, next, Haki. Next, Haki. This is the recent last 3 years from three major depots of Karnataka. I have taken statistics. As we can see that even in the last 3 years, we can see a variability of something from 80,000 rupees. The average price has gone up to 1,30,000 or so. And most of the lots that are exposed for the sale are sold. Uh, Now coming to the teak plantation, this is a we have in Karnataka both kinds of teak, which is naturally found teak, and as well as teak plantations are there. So Karnataka has around 1,20,000 hectares under teak plantation. This is a little rough figure. Around 40 to 45,000 hectares is part of protected areas. That is Nagarhole National Park, Dandeli Wildlife Sanctuary, even Bhadra Tiger Reserve, Bandipur. So we can see that around 30% are not now in extractable category. Uh, but when I checked up with working plans, what is the total area that is coming under teak plantation working circle? That is only around 70,000 area, and this is only 1.65% of the total forest area, which is part of teak improvement working circle in all the working plans of Karnataka. And since there has been a ban on green felling since 1983, what has happened with these plantations is that we have not been able to do uh, regular extractions of these plantations. I will come to that in my next slide. And now the challenge with us is that how to convert these areas so that we can effectively utilize not only forest area but also area also get higher productivity of teak, and teak demand is met. In the working plans, what we see as objectives of management is improve the productivity of existing teak plantations by way of silvicultural thing. This is what is written in the working plans. I am just reproducing it here to meet the demand of timber and realize higher revenue of government, and to improve productivity of plantation areas by taking up soil and water conservation measures in erosion prone area. These are general uh, thing, and also thinnings which are uh, I will come to harvestable garden rotation. See, in most of the uh, older working plans that we have gone through, it is found that CA and MI curves, they have said that it will meet at around 80 years. However, on the conservative side, in the older working plans, the extractable age was kept between 80, 100 or 120 years. In some cases, in maximum plans which were for moist deciduous forest, that is high forest blocks, it is kept even at 120 years in most of the areas. And of course, these four thinning schedules which are given, which are common. First one at 8 years, which is mechanical, removing half of the crop. Second one is silvicultural thinning at 15 years to retain around another 50% to be taken out. Third thinning is prescribed at 30th year, where uh, another 30% of crop is removed based on silvicultural practices. And fourth thinning was prescribed at the age of 50th year, where we have to retain around 300 mature trees in plantation. Next. Now, if you see in forests of Karnataka, my question is little direct. Why is teak confused in forests? That means teak is not confused. In fact, we are all ourselves confused as to how to treat the teak. There is a policy confusion. You see, if you go around since even after independence, if we see, we have been giving confusing policies to our implementers. There has been uh, initial policy was to give materials to industries and earn revenue. And all of a sudden, we shifted it that any revenue is coming, we should go towards outside forest area, and we should not go from natural forest, and then we should start conserving. Even our 1980 Conservation Act or for National Forest Policy 1988 all give conflicting directions to implementers. Forestry being such a long field, such uh, I should say it will take 2 or 3 generations for any policy to be implemented, and we are shifting it every decade from one place to another. So this policy confusion has created confusion for teak also. And there has been a large gap. If I say in most of the areas of Karnataka, we did not have working plans for almost 25 years. So working of forests without working plans has created another confusion, and teak plantations which were supposed to be done with proper thinning and other operations were neglected because there were other operations that were being carried out. In Karnataka, we faced another bigger problem of conservation-based activism in 1980s, which created a big roadblock for taking up regular forestry activities in Karnataka, and that led to order on ban on green felling of 1983. This further kept on uh, culminating into more confusion as to whether thinning can be done, whether it forms part of green filling or not. All these confusions, when they remain for a decade or two, uh, in field the operations suffer, and this is a good time for teak plantations to get converted into other species taking over the teak plantations. And then there is a blanket ban in protected areas for any working. This has certainly had a large scale impact on teak plantations within the protected areas. I think if my personal view is taken, there is nothing wrong if a small portion of area, less than 1% of area, which will form part of uh, a working cycle within 1 year, is taken up for thinning or other cleaning up operations from teak plantations. And teak may not be for revenue purposes, but for cleaning the forest floor, at least it should be taken up in the larger interest of wildlife too. And we all know 202/95 writ petition has also given us a lot of instructions. Now, most of our working is happening based on several guidelines that have come out of this writ petition and IS to that effect. So the question that we come at the end is for augmenting the teak demand and to stabilize the rate that teak is getting in various depots. Now we have Dandeli and Hunsur is considered to be the best teak maybe in at least in Karnataka or in India. Dandeli teak is known for its grains as well as color. And similarly, we have a teli variety of teak, which is also high in oil content, which has a very beautiful grain structure and finish. All such teak is getting such a high rate. Whether this rate is artificial or it is actual rate for the teak, uh, and whether more teak plantations would help, or whether the existing teak plantations are to be done away with. That is the question which we have in front of us. And the way forward is next slide. So the way forward, I would suggest in case of the existing teak plantations, is to assess the productivity of old teak plantations. Unless we assess what is the productivity, because if you see that we have areas which have very low productivity, but we have taken up teak plantations in such areas, which are towards semi-evergreen. Even we have some plantations in semi-evergreen areas also. In places like Jagalpet or Tineghat, also plantations were taken up earlier. And whether these plantations, once we assess the productivity of these areas, we need to segregate these plantations into two categories. One is productive category and another one is conservation category. The ones which are low productive will be part of conservation category, and those from which we can see a future of getting productive teak timber on sustainable basis can be part of productive category. And in case of production plantation out of these teak plantations, necessary thinning, including high grade thinning like D grade thinning, can be introduced so that we bring them on the basis of age to number basis can be per hectare age to number basis can be brought in, and all the dead, moribund, broken, fallen down trees need to be taken, and the floor also needs to be cleaned up. I don't suggest removing any miscellaneous growth that has already come and established itself, but still they should generally give a characteristics of a pure teak plantation. And in case of conservation plantation, as Deepak Sharma Sahab had told yesterday, that we need to take it up with practice of converting it into natural forest, as the teak being one of the constituents. And in case of production plantation, again, as Deepak Sharma Sahab had told yesterday, crown thinning is one of the major things that we must take up instead of going from ground thinning. Crown thinning, which he had yesterday explained, same thing should be followed. And besides all this, I have one more suggestion, that at least this 5% of forest area of the state should be brought back in normal conventional way to teak plantations on the lines of acacia and eucalyptus, because acacia also we are clear felling now, and similarly the way it was done earlier, the area clear felled, uh, not suggesting clear felling the area with all the trees on it, but there are areas which have gaps and other where a lot of weeds are there, but they form part of um, production area for the teak. Such areas should be brought back with conventional methods of RAB, where slush burning was done and teak was planted. Instead of stump method, now we have seedlings which can be planted. And I won't be touching on trees outside forest, because several lectures I have heard where people have given a lot of impetus on how we can augment teak from outside the forest area. So I deliberately kept away from it in case of Karnataka, because trees outside forest itself has seen a lot of fluctuation. Again, in last 25 years, right from so many people coming forward and offering uh, uh, some teak companies had come and said that they will be offering a lot of rewards after a few years, and they will get a lot of returns on their investment, but nothing of this sort has happened, and no one has given even a single paisa, and those who had put money has gone. So we keep on giving confusing signals again to farmers. Now sandal is in rage and mahogany is in rage, and what will happen to it once it comes for the harvest is a matter that is to be seen. So I'm not touching on trees outside forest, but my sincere suggestion is existing teak plantations, whatever it is, 69,000, 70,000 hectares, which uh, are part of working plan, should necessarily be, if there is a policy guideline from Government of India, and since now National Working Plan Code is also being rewritten, and you being one of the esteemed member of that committee, I think we will be seeing some kind of a policy shift when we take off teak plantations, and a clear message is brought to the focus, because in field, in states, people are confused with too many uh, guidelines, directions, code directions, which confuses them as to what is to be done and what is not to be done with a particular forest area. And another additional thing which I said is not to do away with completely with the teak plantations, and we should set aside as area which to my for Karnataka which would be around 20,000 hectares for taking up teak plantations in a conventional way. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Malkede, for very exhaustive way forward. It is only four points, but it has given a way forward. So I just want to have quick response from Tasneem Ahmad sir on the way forward given by Malkede, and Deepak Sharma sir also. And I can see if okay, yeah. Sir, unmute कर लीजिए sir.
Tasneem would like to speak. I I do